So we're finally introduced to Best Girl in JoJo Part 5, Trish. How do you all feel about her? I just quickly want to ask anime-onlys that are watching this episode and starting Part 5 for the first time, how do you feel about Trish's personality and how she treated Fugo and everybody else in this episode? Like, for instance, that entire scene where she's like, give me your jacket and all that. It was a hilarious moment because she's like, give me your jacket, and she just straight up grabs this man's jacket and just wipes her hands off and then starts demanding orders of what she wants. It's pretty funny. And I know many might not like that scene, but it's just so funny to see how this, girl, she's acting all stuck up or like a rich girl or something, and she's just telling all these, like, gangsters and stuff what to do. It's kind of out of the realm of what they're normally used to. I mean, when you think about Fugo as an individual, he is very nice and sweet to Narancia, unless, Narancia makes a mistake, he messes up, and then he takes his anger out on Narancia. We have seen this already twice in JoJo Part 5's anime. And just seeing how she walked up to Fugo and is like, hey, here you go, and just like, dries her hands and asks for all these demands and stuff. You gotta imagine that, Fugo was probably very angry in that moment. If he did not have respect for Bruno, and, also not wanting to die thanks to the boss, being the father of, Trish, he probably would have snapped in that moment because of what happened. But, like I said, it's just a great moment. So anyways, let's talk about the main conflict of what this episode is about. So with Trish's character introduction, which, by the way, Best Girl, and I know many are going to start trolling and say, no, Trish is not Best Girl, Narancia's Best Girl, but before we even get into that type of stuff, though, Trish, with her character introduction, she brings a whole new conflict. One of the main objectives, as we can see from Part 5, is to protect her. Protect her from people that want her dead. People that don't want her around. Now, we need to realize the reason why this is. Why people actually want to hunt her down. People that are not really in the loop or in the know, when they first hear about this boss that's mysterious, nobody knows this individual's name, what he looks like or anything, not even, the high up officials really know what he looks like, and they find out that this individual has a daughter, obviously they're going to want to strike at that, person. They're going to want to strike at the daughter to get to the father and figure out who he is, get money out of him, whatever, because obviously he's very powerful. He holds a very big criminal organization, and so anyone that, is against Passion, they will go out of their way to attack Trish. So it's pretty obvious why the conflict is beginning. It's very simple, but at the same time, it does add a level of, difference compared to what we're normally used to in JoJo. Because, I mean, when we think about Part 3, but you can look at Part 5 as very similar. Part 3 was about hunting down Dio. Hunting him down in Egypt, figuring out where he's at, taking down stand users and stuff, and eventually when you found Dio, you could bring him down and end the entire conflict. Well, this, Part 5 is very similar. When you look at it from a different angle, it's similar. Like, it is very similar to Part 3, because we have a cast of characters traveling together, trying to, find something like, have one common objective. I mean, it's kind of slightly different than Part 4, because Part 4, you had like Josuke, he was traveling around with his, buddies and stuff, and even though they were trying to find Kira in the later half, for the most part, it was just mainly slice of life, which isn't bad, but it was very different from what we saw in Part 3 and even Part 2 and Part 1, and Part 5 kind of goes back to those earlier roots of Part 3, and you can clearly see that with this episode and how they're having to protect Trish and all that, and trying to work as a group, and trying to battle stand users that are constantly coming after them. It's very reminiscent of Stardust Crusaders, which, like I said, I think is one of the big reasons why people love Part 5 so much, is because Part 3 is acclaimed to be one of the best. People love Stardust Crusaders. Everybody really loves that arc because of Dio to, Jotaro. There's a lot of great things, like old Joseph. I mean, seeing how we're having, like, some callbacks to that, like, just some similarities, I could see why people really enjoy Part 5. And myself included, I really enjoyed it, especially when I read it in the manga. But okay, so anyways, Narancia, he is kind of like the main focus in this episode, which makes perfect sense. I mean, when we think about every episode prior to this, basically, Part 5 has been introducing all the main cast of characters slowly. Even though we were technically already name-dropped, like they all got their name dropped, and we know kind of how their appearances and all that, we still don't really know inside and out of how their personality is. For instance, to their stand abilities, to really how they are under pressure. I mean, we recently have gotten to see this, with Leon, we've gotten to see this with Mista, we've seen, Giorno, we've seen Bruno, we've seen, a bunch of characters already have their own development, and the only two characters really remaining to have real good characterization and development is Narancia and Fugo. They're two characters that need to have their own spotlight, and it's finally Narancia's time to step into the spotlight and see what he's capable of, and if, you know, he's worthy to be a part of our main cast of characters. Now, I think everybody seeing, you know, Narancia's stand power in this episode is probably going to be absolutely shocked, because even though it seems simple, just summoning like a plane basically that's just going around shooting stuff at, you know, his enemy that was using little feet. Yeah, that's the stand ability. That's actually the main original name. But basically, Narancia using his stand ability and attacking the dude, you know, many are like, holy crap, even though it doesn't seem as ridiculous as like something like, you know, Jotaro's or, you know, Dio's or, you know, Josuke's or Giorno's, that stand ability does have a lot of potential to be able to just, you know, constantly pin someone down to where you really can't do much. It seems like it has kind of a lot of speed. It's able to turn with its mobility very quickly, and it's able to also lay down firepower to really hurt. So, I mean, you saw the damage to what it was doing to the vehicle, so it's clearly not a weak stand by any means. Now, we don't know exactly from this episode how far he can really deploy, you know, Aerosmith, but we do know that it is very powerful, and Narancia is also not a weakling by any means. I mean, look what he was doing to the vehicle. He got so angry and fury, he just started kicking the crap out of the, you know, the vehicle, and he started denting the door. And eventually, once his, you know, rage mode was done, like his road rage, he just, he hurt his foot, and he's like, ow, 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 and he starts, like, jumping up. But basically, Narancia, he has some anger issues. It's clear as day. Like, you know, he's a sweet kid. It's obvious that he loves his music, and, you know, he obviously doesn't know everything. He's a little bit ditzy in some ways, but he does have a temper. He has a very big temper. You make the man mad, you do anything to him, he's gonna strike at you. I mean, we saw this already twice in this episode. I mean, with the whole thing with, you know, the dude that, you know, encountered him at the end, to also the situation with Trish. When Trish was introduced, before he even knew who she was, you know, he started to, you know, have conflict with her. He was gonna do something to her, and it just shows that he, as an individual, he has problems really maintaining his anger, and it kind of makes you wonder about Fugo and, you know, Narancia's relationship, because obviously Fugo and Narancia does have a very close connection. Even though Fugo does get a little bit violent and he gets a little bit upset towards, you know, Narancia, he does obviously care about the man. He's like, hey, you know, I believe in you and all that. He's constantly saying these things to Narancia, and we don't really know much about Fugo yet, but from what we could see from their exchange, it does seem like he truly does care about Narancia, and he does believe that he is capable of things, but he's just really tired of him being so ditzy and having that one certain character flaw to where he's just not able to comprehend everything. So, anyways, let's talk about the stand ability. So, besides Narancia's stand ability, which is Aerosmith, we have Little Feet. Now, it's a funny name. Let's just be honest here, it's a funny name, and the stand ability, looking at what he did in this episode, it isn't anything impressive either. And once again, as I always say in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, just because the stand doesn't look impressive or doesn't look as, you know, pizzazz or flashy as something like, you know, Jotaro's or Josuke's or Giorno's, doesn't mean it is a bad stand. It could be very powerful depending on the application, how it is used in certain fights, and that's basically what the character even said in this episode. He's like, hey, you know, I get made fun of all the time for my stand ability. People laugh at me, make fun of me, saying my ability is useless, but in reality, his ability really isn't useless when you actually take a moment to think about it. Let's talk about it. So, his stand ability, he's able to shrink himself down into a smaller size. Now, obviously, with being able to do something like that, he does put himself in somewhat danger, because if someone discovers him like that, you know, obviously they can, you know, easily just hit him, throw him to the side, do some pretty bad damage to him, since, you know, he's at a smaller state. Animals would be very worrisome. Something like a dog or a cat would be very worrisome. So it's clear as day that, you know, you need to technically worry. But here's the point, though. He also, even though he's capable of shrinking himself down, he's able to do that to others. And they slowly diminish in size, which you see what was happening to Narancia in this episode. He was getting smaller and smaller towards the end, and he's obviously unaware of it, so it doesn't really have any side effects. For instance, you're not able to feel that you're, you know, shrinking down. You will eventually start to notice when, you know, let's say your height's going lower, but, you know, it's a gradual change. The time it already starts, you know, it's already kind of too late. You really can't counter it that much because you're just getting smaller and smaller. And you got to factor in, if, you know, the dude that's using Little Feet, you know, gets up and, you know, he starts, you know, getting big again, while, let's say, someone like Narancia is continuously getting smaller, you know, he can instantly get ended quickly, because you gotta imagine this is like an assassination group, and so they're able to end people pretty quickly, especially with an ability like that, because you wouldn't even have to worry about getting rid of the body, because it'd be easy cleanup. Think about it. So, I think, you know, at the end of the day, the Little Feat's stand ability, it obviously isn't flashy, it isn't crazy, but I don't think it is something to joke about or laugh about, because in a certain environment and the way you apply it, it can be a very deadly stand. It can definitely really destroy someone pretty easily. I mean, think about it like this. Even if, let's say, we know the power of, let's say, you know, Jotaro and how he used his stand ability, Star Platinum, if he was to slowly shrink down in size, obviously, as he's getting smaller, most likely his power is going to get a lot weaker, most likely, unless something else happens, because he is getting smaller. That's the point I'm getting at. So, anything else really left to talk about? I guess besides Trish and, you know, all of that, I guess we have progression with the story that, you know, Bruno, he's getting up there in the ranks, and as things continue to go on, eventually he's going to be able to eventually meet the boss, which that means that we'll find out who is really leading this gang, and if, you know, Giorno can become, you know, a gang star. But I think that's pretty much about it, so let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you, you know, enjoy my content, you know, please subscribe. And also, tell me how you felt about this episode. Did you enjoy it? Did you hate it? How'd you feel about all the content, the way David Productions handled everything? Because obviously, you know, they've been doing a fantastic job, and I just want to hear. And also, I want to hear from you manga readers as well, actually. Even though I've read this, I still want to hear what manga readers are feeling, because it's very fascinating to get, you know, a full opinion on how both sides feel about this anime adaptation of Part 5 JoJo. But okay, with that, I'll end it. I love you guys. If you enjoy my content, you know, please subscribe. If you like this video, please leave a like. And if you want to get notified for whenever I upload a video, please click the bell icon down below. And with that, Chibi out.